Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. We have something different for you tonight. I'm going to be wrapping up February. I read a fair number of books. Um, and I'm going to be doing a book battle. Jeremy Fee style without the awesome graphics, but I've got the books to hold up here. But first, before I reveal the 8 that I'm going to be doing book battles with, I'm going to talk about the few that are not going to be part of this. The first book that I finished in February was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and I'm excluding that one because it was an underwhelming read for me. There's no other way to put it. It wasn't great. It would be a first round loss to, I think, any of the 8 books that are going to be competing in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just kick that one out of there. My apologies to those of you that love East of Eden. It has great merits to it. I'm not going to deny that by any means, but it's just not the book that I would ever grab again and read. It convinced me that I probably would not enjoy revisiting Grapes of Wrath either. And in March, when I finish Steinbeck's King Arthur and the Acts of His Noble Knights, I think I will be ready to say goodbye to Steinbeck for at least a good while. His shorter works were fine. I've read those in the past. But I just don't think Steinbeck is really the right author for me. So, and that's okay. It's great that he is a great author for many other people. I'm happy for those people that enjoy him, but he's not for me. The next one I'm going to exclude off the list is the X-Men Dark Phoenix Saga. So this is the first set of comics that I read for my attempt to read anything that had Kitty Pryde and Shadowcat in it. And unfortunately, she was only featured in a couple of the issues in here. But this is a very widely regarded story arc for the X-Men, and I absolutely enjoyed it. It was famously made into the third X-Men movie, where it was done okay, I guess, but required a very hard reset, which led to the next set of X-Men. And it has me back in an X-Men mood. So I need to get some more X-Men stuff to be able to read more that has Kitty Pryde in it, whether in X-Men or in the early arcs of Excalibur and things of that nature. But I did absolutely enjoy this, and the only reason I'm excluding it is because I would have an odd number. It would probably beat a good couple of these head to head, but I don't think it would win. But I did really, really enjoy it. The next one I'm excluding is Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumont. This was a reread for me over the last 2 months, and oh my gosh, I absolutely loved it. It reminded me quickly why Dumont, if I wasn't considering genre, would absolutely be on my Mount Rushmore of authors. Right there, probably second or third next to Tolkien. Absolutely love Dumas, and this was a delight to reread. And yeah, there's not much more to say about that. And then the last one that I'm excluding is The Fellowship of the Ring, because we all know that inevitably, at some point in time, Three Musketeers and Fellowship of the Ring would come up together against each other. And I'd have to do the Jeremy Fee style of I'm going to advance them both. They both win, whatever point in time in that round it was. So I'm excluding those. And I think that excludes any rereads for me, which is good. Because the 8 I'm going to be talking about, I pulled the 8 together and then hit random twice to see which 2 would go next to each other, put them aside, dropped it down to 6 on the randomizer, hit it twice until I got the next 2, and so these are randomly paired. So unlike Jeremy Fee, I'm not grouping them by any kind of criteria like that. But we're just going to go right through. So the first pairing here is The Prism by Emile Pataga. So this I read for Sword and Sorcery Week, or not for Sword and Sorcery Week, but for Classic Sci-Fi, or Classic Fantasy Week. Gosh, for FS, February Fantasy Stories. It turned out to be about 60% sci-fi and about 40% fantasy, which was still fine. It was really enjoyable. Certainly not a standout book by any means. The biggest key to this is it has me wanting to read the other half of this ace double and to find more ace doubles at some point in time. This is the only ace double I have, and I absolutely love this concept of being able to have two different books at my disposal with one book carried with me. The length is nice and short, so I'll be reading this one probably in March just to finish the ace double and to get the book read. And it's going up against not the entire collection by Bradbury here, but in particular Dandelion Wine, which I had never read before. And it was the only book out of these four that I had never read before. And spoiler, sometime this year I'm going to be reading Something Wicked This Way Comes. I might save it for closer to October. We'll see, because I have plenty of other Bradbury to read that I haven't encountered before. And it was enjoyable. Certainly not my favorite of Bradbury's stories so far, but not my least favorite either. It had some really, really wonderful language, wonderful ideas, with a kind of a loose narrative of just capturing memories and instances and things that you encounter over the course of a summer, which I thought was great. And so the head-to-head matchup here, we're going to give the nod to Dandelion Wine, so he's going to advance to the next round. So next we have two more for February Fantasy Stories. We have No One Knows the Cat by Ian Mccaffrey, which is a nice short novella. And then a fantasy medley. So this is a set of 4 fantasy short stories. The highlight in this one was Robin Hobb, Words Like Coins, which was absolutely delightful. Fantastic story. And if all 4 stories in here had been by Robin Hobb, it could very well have been a contender for Best Book of the Month. Barring Fellowship of the Ring and Three Musketeers. But unfortunately for this collection, she did not write all 4 of the stories in here. And the others were just not as enjoyable. None of them were bad, but none of them were great. I was disappointed with my very first encounter with Kate Elliott, but I won't hold it against her because I'm sure that her strength was not in her short stories. And then we have No One Knows the Cat, which is a story about a prince who ends up kind of adopting a cat. And the cat's got a bit of a personality, and he holds a lot of weight in how the cat views things. And there's some political marriage going on, and some wooing, and some assassination plots, and some really interesting stuff. It was really tough to get into for about the first 30 pages, but after that, I had a hard time putting it down. It was not fantastic, but it was definitely very enjoyable. And so it definitely wins this round. So it will be going up against Bradbury's Dandelion Wine. Next, we have the biggest book on this list, Ender's Shadow by Orson Scott Card. So this is the parallel kind of story to Ender's Game. Going up against Day World by Philip Jose Farmer, which I read with Scott Danielson. So Ender's Shadow follows Bean, one of the main characters that we see alongside Ender over the course in Ender's Game, who comes in probably about mid-book and has a pretty big role from there, and is the short, undersized, really young kid who obviously is going to remind Ender of himself when he had first gotten into battle school. And this tells the background story of who Bean was before he got there, how he got his nickname, his life in coming into battle school, how he viewed Ender and all of that. And then it really breezed quickly, it felt, through the time when he became a part of Ender's army and then went off into command school after that, and everything that happened with the buggers and all of that. It was really, really enjoyable. Probably still like Ender's Game more, but definitely a worthwhile successor. Whereas Dayworld was a very imaginative science fiction of a world where people are only awake for 1 out of 7 days a week. This is conserving time, energy, all of that. If the world had been so populated that only 1/7 of the population can be awake at any given time. And then there are these people that a secret organization of people that are breaking the law and are awake more than just the one day that they're supposed to be. And so they live different lives. And this follows one person who is a different person for each of the 7 days of the week. And we get to see all 7 of them, some of them far briefer appearances than I would have liked, but really, really fascinating concepts and ideas. An interesting plot that ends in a way that is a little confusing at first read, but was absolutely enjoyable and very, very, very good. And this is a very hard matchup. If this was in the finals, I probably would pull the Jeremy Fee and call a tie here. And I hate to do it, but I think Dayworld is going to go on by Philip Jose Farmer. This is my first introduction to Philip Jose Farmer, and I absolutely loved it. So Tom from LA Books, thank you for that recommendation that you gave to Scott Danielson, and thank you to Scott for mentioning that you were going to be reading this soon and allowing me to jump in and read it alongside you. It was very delightful. And so, last but certainly not least, we have The Three-Bladed Doom by Robert E. Howard, which I mistakenly thought, based on the cover and by that big word right there, Conan, but it actually is by the creator of Conan. And this is El Borak, which you would think that this is kind of a sword and sorcery, heroic fantasy story, but it is not that at all. It's definitely heroic fantasy, but not anything like Conan, not anything like Bran McMorn either, but still enjoyable. But the very, very misleading cover. Going up against The Stars Like Dust by Isaac Asimov. And this one is an interesting story that is taking place in the future, and it's kind of political in nature, very set in space. Earth is kind of been broken down, and so people have expanded and have gone out and are expanding out into space, into other cultures, and there's some plots. The main character's father has been assassinated. He doesn't know why, trying to figure it out, surviving attempts on his own life, meets some really interesting people along the way, and has some really fun and fascinating adventures with lots of really interesting intrigue and twists along the way. And of course, this is easily winning over that one. Nothing against El Borak. I still absolutely enjoy Robert E. Howard's writing. The writing itself was not the problem. The problem here is that he went up against Isaac Asimov. In this book, it's been a long time since I've read Foundation, so I can't consider that one in there. But my goodness. But between reading iRobot last month and then this month, I'm excited to read more Isaac Asimov. So we go back. We have the final four. So first up, we have Dandelion Wine against No One Knows the Cat. So we have Ray Bradbury, one of my favorite authors, my extra added in on that fantasy Mount Rushmore, the one that didn't fit into the genre, versus Ian Mccaffrey, who is a well-known name in the fantasy genre, with a thin novella. And as much as I enjoyed Ian Mccaffrey and how it ended up going, the nod has to go to Ray Bradbury here, because Dandelion Wine is a delightful read. It's got just beautiful language, beautiful imagery all along the way. So even though it wasn't my favorite Bradbury story and wasn't the strongest Bradbury that I've ever read, the first two that precede it on here would be number 1s and 2. Although Fahrenheit being number 1, then Martian Chronicles being number 2. Dandelion Wine is still a very worthwhile inclusion into this Library of America volume. And so we come to seeing if Philip Jose Farmer and Dayworld or Isaac Asimov and The Stars Like Dust are going to go up against Ray Bradbury. And this is hard. This feels like a finals matchup right here, because these were both absolutely, probably were, all things considered, 1 and 2 from my reading of the month for new to me reads. And as much as I loved the ideas in Dayworld, The Stars Like Dust, from start to finish, was just an incredible read, an incredible ride all the way through. And I have to hesitantly give the nod to this one, which means we have Asimov up against Ray Bradbury for the finals. And most of the time, I would say Bradbury would probably have an easy win here. But he's up against The Stars Like Dust, which was just phenomenal. It blew me away. I went into Dandelion Wine expecting to enjoy it because it's Ray Bradbury. I went into The Stars Like Dust not knowing anything about it other than it was sitting on my shelf. It's a relatively short book, and I wanted to read more Asimov. And this book blew me away. I enjoyed it so much. Fantastic book. I mean, it's not even 200 pages. It's 192. And definitely worth reading. If you see a copy, pick it up. If you have any interest at all in science fiction, it is really, really enjoyable story. It's not super hard science fiction, so it's not full of a whole bunch of bogged down with minute details of the science. But it tells a really, really gripping story from beginning to end. And I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't read this one. So there you have it. There's my February wrap-up. And we are 3 days into March. And I've already finished 3 books in March. I'm enjoying my ability to read on my own. And that should tell you a lot. I'm having a good time in March. Now that I've crossed that finish line, I'm just freely letting myself explore. I read Binti in a single day. I finished Stainless Steel Rest Revenge, which I had started and put off for the rest of February for everything else I had going on. And then I read all of Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare and enjoyed all 3 of them. And I'm currently working my way through the last of Steinbeck on his King Arthur book, as well as The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. And Steinbeck right now is probably the weakest of all of those, which, I mean, no surprise to me. It's Steinbeck. It's probably my favorite of the Steinbeck books, but it's definitely the weakest. I've been reading all this poetry because you're seeing the poetry every day, and I'm enjoying that. I've started Njaal's Saga, getting myself excited for Saga Long next month when we're going to read Eagle Saga, which I read years ago and really enjoyed and have been wanting for almost an entire year to read Njal Saga when I discovered, I think it was June or July, that the Saga Long was a thing that I had missed. It took place in April. They had read Njal Saga. And so I was like, well, I need to read this. I've got it on my shelf. And so it was naturally one of the first books I went and grabbed and said, I want to read it this month. And I'm enjoying it. It's fun being able to just grab whatever's grabbing my attention at the time and trying to focus myself on just one book at a time. Sometimes that's hard. So I hope you're having a great day. As you can tell, I'm kind of excited. So let me know what you thought of the book battle. Do you want me to do it again at the end of March? Let me know. What was your top read of February? I would love to know that too, or even your top 2. Let me know your 2 favorites and which one would win if they fought. So thank you, BookTube.